Alright, welcome back to the channel. Alright, so in this video I'd like to go over just a few things from Prism that can make life a little bit easier when if you're trying to write a program for ESAPI in Eclipse to use in Eclipse or whatever, that where you have like multiple views. If you're doing like a standalone, then you're not really working with views, so you don't really have to worry about it. And then, so it's really if you're choosing to make like a user interface, and then also for to implement like the MVVM design pattern. So one of the reasons that people don't like to use MVVM is that it can make things a little more difficult as far as wiring up like events in your user interface, your GUI, with like the code that like the logic that it's, that's interacting with it. So with MVVM, everything's kind of separated, right? You've got your models, your views, and then your view models. The view model is basically what is intended to link your models or your business data with your view. And so it's intended for those three parts to be separated. And so MVVM becomes pretty difficult because you need all of a sudden you need some extra code to help you monitor and update the changes in the view. Whereas when you're just putting everything in the code behind it, you name your buttons and then you can access that button in your code behind. With MVVM, you can't do that. So it's not as straightforward. And then with the idea, if you're using MVVM, the idea is that you have things separated. So even on like one user interface, you might have like 4 different sections, and maybe each one is in its own separate view. And then maybe you have like one total view that hosts like each of the 4 views. And so at that point, everything's separated, and so when you change something in one section or one view, you may also want to update another view or another section of your user interface. And so at this point, though everything's separated, nothing's linked, so you have to there's like some extra things you have to do in order to let the other views know that you've changed something in another view. So it's just a little annoying. Well, it's not a little. It's pretty annoying. And then the other thing that I personally find difficult is just button events. All of a sudden, buttons become much more difficult to manage compared to when you're just putting everything in the code behind. Something that I found pretty early on. Well, actually, it wasn't early on. It took me a while to find this because I wasn't really looking for anything. But there's a NuGet package called Prism that makes a lot of this stuff very, very straightforward and much, much easier. And so with so the first thing, monitoring and updating your view, you just use the BindableBase class, and then you can use DelegateCommands for your buttons, and then PubSubEvents help you link the different views. And basically all you do is you publish an event. Every time something happens in your other view, you subscribe to that event, and then when that event fires, then you pass a method so that every time that event is fired, that this other method will run in your other view. So it allows you to update things really very straightforward, or very easily, relatively easily. So I have this project. Let's see, I think it's this one. And I'm going to go ahead and close this one. So a while back I'd made this video where we put together like a very simple view in it's not a standalone, it's a WPF app, and it's just, I have some like dummy data that will allow us to create this simple view to hold on, sorry, I got distracted. Yeah, so we have the simple view just to show an example of gosh, I can't think of binding and things like that. And so in this example though, I used the iNotify property changed. So in order to do this, you have this method. You need to inherit from the iNotify property changed, and then once you do that, then and you have this method, then in each of your things, whenever you want it to be updated, you just call your method. And so now, let me actually comment that out, and I'll show you. So when I select and again, this is just dummy data, but when I select a structure set, nothing happens. But if I uncomment that and then run it again, then you can see this now gets updated. And so in our view, you can see they're just things are just binded, or they're bound. So using binding, it's just bound to the structure set ID. And this list here is bound to the structures. And so what we want to do is we just want to, instead of doing this though, let me just show you really quickly that that's all you have to do in order to get it to work. I think that was the only other one. Let's see. What? Yeah, so this is all bound to the selected structure ID. So that should be fine. So let's just try that. So now, we don't get this list. Alright, so when this gets updated, it runs this method, and we can see that this is setting the structure set, which then gets the, and then get structures is called. So then we need to update this. So we just need to add that to that. And then I think the selected structure as well. Yep, so selected structure. Because that gets, whoops. That's not what we want. We just want that. All right. So now everything should be wired up. So yeah, so now you change the structure and then this stuff gets updated, all right? So what we want to do, the first thing we want to do is change this from this to using Prism. So we're going to just get rid of all of this, and we'll get rid of this. And we're just going to comment this out. I think we actually need to comment that out too. All right, so we're going to add a reference. So let's see, let me figure out. Okay, so 461, which would be similar to using like version 16, I think. In like a binary plugin. So we're going to manage NuGet packages, and we're going to browse. We're going to look for Prism, and I'm just going to add. I don't really think it matters. I think even just prism.core will probably work. So this is .NET 461. And it looks like it's going to need system.value.tuple, which is fine. So I'm just going to install that, and then it'll tell me if it runs into any problems. All right, and this page pops up. You can just close that. That pops up. Okay, so we've got Prism and value tuple. Okay. All right, so the first thing that we need to do, so again, let's just run it really quickly. So now like nothing happens, right? So the first thing that you would need to do to, and this is just like monitoring events, right? So to duplicate the iNotify property changed, you just need to inherit from BindableBase, and then we'll use control dot and then bring in the using Prism.mvvm. Looks like it didn't. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we've got that. And then what we need to do is for all of these properties, instead of this, what we're going to do is we're going to add set property that. So it's going to be this method. So I'm just going to copy this, and we're just going to do this for the others too. And I'll change those over in just a second. All right, and let's try that. See what happens. All right, so just like that, we're already linked back up. All right, so, and actually let's test it one more time. Change this, and it changes the color and the different data, so that's good. All right, so, and again, it's just dummy data. But, so yeah, so just by adding BindableBase, well, obviously we added Prism, and we inherit the BindableBase class, and which I think if we look at it, so it inherits from iNotify property changed. And you know, a lot of people do this on their own. They'll just create a base class and then you know, create their own version of this, which you can absolutely do. And then if that's all you need, then there's really no need to use Prism, because it didn't really, you know, we didn't really need to do that. It wasn't very much more code to do the same thing. And let's see, so in our view, I'm going to add this title here. I'm going to go ahead and bind for that just so we can see that as well. So let's see. So binding, and then I think it's title. And so this needs to be now a full property. So we need something like this. So I'm going to copy this one. Yeah, I think so. You know, actually, I think if we're only setting it once, I don't think it will actually matter. So we're setting the title here, and we're doing that. So simple binding example. Okay, let's just try that. You don't always need a backing. Yeah, so you don't always, so this right here, you don't always need a backing field, like a private backing field, with the full like get set, like with the set property with the reference and everything. All right, so now the next thing I want to do, I want to think about it for a second. So the other issue, if we go back, so one was buttons, right? Wiring up a button. We're going to skip that for now. So right now everything's in the same view. So let's split up. Let's split this section. So this whole, let's see, I don't know what's going on there. So this stack panel, okay. So this is all in its own section. Just look at this. Okay, so this thing. So let's put this in its own view. So let's, instead of this, let's do a local, and then let's add another view. So let's say structure details view. And we haven't created it yet, but we're going to. So, and local, just so you know, local is up here, so it's in MVVM with Prism.views. So if we add another view here, so we're going to add a user control, and we're going to name it, I think it was structure, what do we call it? Structure details view. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to paste it here. Okay, and this is just to show that it's in a different view now. And what we need to do is we need to set the data context, and we'll set this to binding, and then we'll call it, we'll bind it to the structure details view model. Okay, and let's just see if we can build this. And so it still builds, and we can actually still see it, which is good, but now when we change things, nothing happens, right? Because it's in a completely different, it's being monitored in a different view now. And we actually haven't even created the view model. So let's add a new class. We'll call it the structure details view model. And we'll make this public. And we'll go ahead and inherit from BindableBase. And if we look in that view, we can see all we actually need is a selected structure. Okay, so all of these properties are from the selected structure. So we actually only need to pass the selected structure to this view model. And if we look back in our main view model, basically what we can do is we can copy. So what was it? It was the selected structure. So let's just copy this. And we'll make a new one of these. Okay. And we've already wired that up to be updated, but, and let's see. We need the constructor. So let's go to our main view model, and we need a, let's see. We need view models. So we need the structure details view model. And I'm just going to name it the same. And then we'll put a getter and a setter. And that's all we need there. But then when we initialize, so we'll just set it up here. We won't worry about, let's see. So we'll just pass that. And what we need, let's see. I don't want to create this every time. So we could do it the simple way. Well, it's not simple. But every time the, let's see, what property do we have? So every time this gets changed, we could just create a new, instance of this view. But we don't really want to do that. We just want to update it with the information that we have. Instead of creating a whole new instance of it, we just want to update it. So what we want to do is we want to subscribe to an event. And so let's create let's see. Let me pause it for a second and think. Okay, yeah, so we, instead of creating a new instance of our view model every single time this gets changed, what we want to do is we actually want to just publish an event. So let's create a new folder. So we're going to do add an events folder, and then we're going to add a new class, and we're going to call this the structure. Let's see, we'll call it the update structure details event, and this is going to be public as well, and it's going to inherit from PubSubEvent, and we'll just bring in using Prism.events, and then we need to tell it what type of, like, what payload is going to be passed, like what type of object is going to be passed along with the event, or every time the event is published, or whatever. And so what we want to do is we want to do I think it's just a structure. So let's bring in our dummy structure model, and we can just double check. This is that. Yep. So they selected structure. And then here in our in this, what we want to do is in our constructor. So we're going to create an instructor. Oh, you know what we need? We actually need, let me back up a little bit really quickly. So when we create this, let's create, an event aggregator. So this is a Prism.events thing, and we're going to create that. And then on startup, we're going to create this new event aggregator, and we're actually going to pass this to here. And you can see it's red there, so we're just going to do control dot, and we're going to generate, we actually don't want to generate a new constructor, we just want to add a parameter. So we're going to add that parameter, and then if we go here, you can see that, let's see, you can see it's not red anymore. So let's close this, and so now you can see that this is there. And so let's get rid of this, and we actually want to do an iEvent aggregator. I don't think I took, so we're going to use using Prism.events, and then we're going to grab that, and then we're going to generate a field. So it's going to be, I think it actually brought it down here. So we're going to move this up here. Alright, so then we're going to use this to publish our event. So every time this selected structure gets changed, we're going to publish the event. So we're going to say event aggregator dot get event, and then we need to tell it what type of event. So it's the update structure details event, and maybe it should actually be the structure selected event, something like that. You can name it. That was probably a better way to name that. But anyway, we're going to bring in the dot events, so this folder here, and then we're going to say publish, so .publish, and we're going to send it, we're going to pass it in what it needs to send, so it's payload. And it guessed that we needed to send the selected structure, which is what we need. Whoops. And so now we're going to publish this. Let me just go ahead and bring this to a new line. Okay. So it's easier to read. All right, so now we've published that event. And then in this, what we need to do is so we're actually going to need the so let's go, so we're done with the event. Let's go here, and when we create this, let's see, so we create it up here, and we actually need to pass it the event aggregator so that it can subscribe to the event. And so we don't need to generate a new constructor, we just need to add a parameter. And so we can go here and we can see that that has been added. And we'll just bring in the using. I'm going to get rid of these that we don't need. All right, and then we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to save a copy of that, generate a field. And then we're going to just say event aggregator dot get event, and it's the update structure details event, and we need to bring that in, so it's the dot events folder, and we're going to subscribe, and then so it already knows what we're going to receive. We're going to receive that selected structure. So what we need to pass it in here is an action, so a method basically. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to update structure details, and we don't need to pass it like this. We just need to pass it the name, and then that doesn't exist yet, so we're just going to create that. So generate method. So we want to generate a method, and here, so I'm going to name this what it would have been. You could leave it as object, but this way I know like what it was. So it's the selected structure. You could maybe newly selected structure. I don't know, something like that. It doesn't matter. Actually, sidebar. So, or side note. I was watching some stuff the other day from a guy on YouTube who has got a ton of really good stuff. His name's Nick Chapsis. I think I'm saying his name correctly. I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But anyway, he's got a ton of really good, like high quality, and like really like he goes into the weeds with things. So anyway. He was talking about, whether or not you need comments. Number one, we're not really commenting a lot here, but if you've watched any of the other videos, like that's something that I kind of talk about. He talked about the difference, like he doesn't consider this a comment because he just, this is something that goes with this object. So he kind of, he talked about the difference of these, right? But one of the things that he talked about was like, or he was questioning like, do you need comments if you name things well? So if you name things very, very clearly, then you don't need a comment that says, update the new structure details. Right? You don't need a comment that basically says the exact same thing here. So anyway, I'm not going to go into any more details about that, but I just thought that was interesting. So if you're naming things really well, then you probably don't need to worry so much about comments like this. But if you're, I would encourage everyone to do this so that they can document. It's basically, you're basically documenting your methods. Anyway, all right, so enough of that. So we've subscribed to it, and now we've created this method. And then all we need to do is we need to set this. So we're going to say selected structure equals selected structure. Okay, and that should, in theory, that should wire this up to where it works now. I think that's everything. I could completely be wrong, so I will have to pause it and figure it out if it doesn't work, but let's just try it. All right, and it did not work, of course. All right, so let me take a look and see what is going on. Okay, so I'm silly, you probably already noticed this, but I forgot to make this public. So now let's try, because I was like, why is this grayed out? All right, so anyway, nice thing about you know, this doing it in a WPF app with like dummy data is that I can play around with debug, like I can add breakpoints and that sort of thing. So like every time this gets changed, this got hit and then this got hit. So then I was like, okay, so why is it not working? So now it gets updated, all because, let me get rid of these, all because I didn't set this to public. So I just went ahead and typed this instead of adding public first. So if you use prop tab, that'll help you help prevent you from making silly mistakes like that. So anyway, so now it works like it used to, and those are in two different views. So hopefully that helps make some things a little more clearer, or whatever. But you can use events and you can use BindableBase with Prism to do those two things. We're only at 30 minutes, so let me think about a button. Let's see, what could we add? Let's see. Let's just do something silly. Not silly, but let's see. Okay, so this is this view. And we'll just add a design background. I think it's already white. Let's check. Main view. Yeah. And this, which is white, but for consistency's sake, we'll just do that. And then we can change the width if we want. Okay, so let's see. What's the width here? Set to auto, of course. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That looks fine. Okay. It doesn't matter because it's going, that's just for in your designer. It's going to do whatever this does. Unless you set it in your actual values. But anyway, let's add a button in this view. So let's just go to the bottom and let's see, where is this? So stack down. So, okay, so this is vertical. So let's just add a button and add some content and say I don't know. We'll just say maybe change color. So change structure color. And what we need is we need a command. So whereas before you would wire it up to an event. So like you would say click or like on, what is it, on click? Yeah, so you would just wire it up to this click event, and it would be a new event handler in the code behind. Instead, we're going to use a command, and we're going to bind this to the change structure color command. And so now in our, we're just going to get rid of this, and we get rid of that. So now this is that. So we need to create this command. So we need a new delegate. I did it again. So delegate command, and we're going to bring in prism.commands, and we're going to name it, let's see, what was it? Change structure color command. And when we create this, we're going to set it. So we're going to create it. So we're going to say this equals new delegate command, and it takes an action. So I think we could just pass it a method. So there's actually a couple of things you could do. You could even pass it a can execute method. So like you could pass it some logic to test to make sure that the button can even be fired or clicked, which is kind of nice. I'm not going to get into that right now, but let's just say change selected structure color. And that doesn't exist yet. So we want a method, and I think that will work actually. The other thing that you might see is this. You might see an anonymous call to do that, and then to do this. So you might see that too. And then you might see like a can execute, whatever. But anyway, so I'll just leave it at that. But it looked like you could just do it the other way too, similar to this, which is fine, either one, it doesn't really matter. So we're going to just say selected structure dot color equals brushes dot, bring that in, and we're just going to say, I don't know, let's see, actually, let's see, do we have, let's see, we get a random color, so let's see, RGB string, so let's just do this, let's just copy this. And we'll just get a new random color. But we need to create the random, so we're just going to grab, see, I think it actually gets passed a random. So let's do that. Let's create a random at the, into here. No, not here. We don't need anything in the views. Oh, so we did set a random. So let's just pass it this random. So let's say, let's go here, and we're just gonna pass it the random. So it'll have that same random, and we're gonna use control dot, and we're just gonna add a parameter, and then we're gonna go back here. So now we've got this random, and we're gonna say, we're going to get a copy of it, equals random, control dot, generate a field. So now we have that, and we'll just change it to this. right, so now we're just gonna make a new color. So now let's try it. Whoops, okay, so we actually don't have a color yet, so we should probably add, so we'll say if, oh wait, I'm still debugging. If selected structure is not, actually let's tab that. All right, let's try that. And then let's see if we can break it again. So actually, that would actually be a good example of this, like the can execute change. All right, you could probably figure that out. So we won't go into that now though. So let's see. So let's do start. I think that's going to work. Nope, it doesn't like that. Object not set. Let's see what we're bound to. This is the view. Color is bound to the color. Okay, so this exists. Oh, maybe? Am I even allowed to set this? Let's see. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just thinking. I'm so silly. Okay, so I created this after, or sorry, before I actually created the random. So I passed it a null value. So let's just move this to the end. We could just move it after the random, but anyway, that should fix it. And I think I still have a breakpoint in there. Yep, so I hit this breakpoint. So let's just stop it, get rid of that. And the breakpoint helped me figure out where I was hitting, and then it was saying that the value was null. Let's see, so we're changing the color, but it's not getting updated. So that's interesting. Oh, you know, okay, so that makes sense. So we would actually, okay, so that's, so that actually brings up a good point. When you're making your own models that are going to be displayed in your view, and you want like to update them, you actually have to make the properties in your model observable as well. So you can do the same thing. You inherit. So like. Let's see, so this is a selected structure. So if we were to go here, and if I were to, you would need to inherit from BindableBase, and then you would make you'd have this, and then you'd have the set property, ref, all that stuff. And you could do that for all of your properties. That way, this object could be updated in the view as well. I'm not going to go through all of that, but at least the button works, right? So, and the way that we got that to work was just by binding it to a command. So it's actually really straightforward, and Prism helps you do that. So we're at 45 minutes, so I'm going to stop here. But essentially, those three things, using BindableBase, DelegateCommands for buttons, and then publishing and subscribing events and passing along like a payload, or like an object or a list of objects or whatever. Those three things alone will help you create some pretty complex user interfaces with ESAPI. So I hope that was helpful, and if you have any ideas or anything or questions, be sure to let me know. And as always, thank you for watching, and keep coding.